r/AskReddit. What is your best sorry wrong number moment? I remember getting a wrong number call a few days ago. They introduced themselves in a very intimidating manner, stating that everything spoken over the phone would be recorded and used against me in court. But then they asked for Rebecca, and I mentioned that they had the wrong number. Their tone of voice completely changed afterwards, and they apologized and hung up. That's so funny, because a friend of mine changed his number due to getting completely deserved debt collection calls. Every now and then I'd call the number trying to reach my friend, and this super angry chick would start screaming at me thinking I was a debt collector. Turns out she inherited his old number and was getting all these threatening calls. She was literally saying stuff like, if I ever find the guy who all you collectors are looking for, I'm gonna kill that MFer. So my calls would start out nice, then I'd have to impromptu act like a debt collector so that she wouldn't realize I knew the guy in real life. For about 8 years I was getting calls from debt collectors looking for a woman whose name I don't remember. When I would tell the caller that the woman they were looking for no longer had this number, they would always ask where they could reach her. Seriously? I would then have to tell them I had no idea who she even was. Most of them would stop calling. But one company was very persistent. I told them several times what the situation was, but they kept calling. I finally had to bring out my inner Karen and talk to a manager. They finally stopped calling. Back when I was a kid, we lived 3,000 miles away from our grandparents, so we didn't get to see them very often. One evening the phone rang. I answered and had a really nice chat with my grandma for about 10 minutes. She called me the wrong name to say goodbye, and I was confused, and we both realized she dialed the wrong number. Now you have two grandmas. Most people do. OMG, you're right, didn't even realize, haha. So I guess they have one additional grandma now. Pretty sure that's called 3. Whenever someone called AT&T's info line and asked for the time of day for Seattle, Washington, they would get connected with my cell phone number. I got so many voicemails of old people who were pissed. I got tired of answering my phone saying, I don't know why they listed my number, but the time is 1:30 p.m. The AT&T guy thought I was insane trying to explain, until I made him call, and when I answered I was like, yep, it's me. Somehow Google had my small company's number listed as the number for a Cricket wireless store in Texas. I'd constantly get calls, often from angry customers, and it took weeks to get it fixed. The guy at Google somehow couldn't quite grasp the concept and kept telling me to call Cricket to get it fixed, giving me my number to call. I got really tempted to start telling people they'd won a free iPhone or something, just to get the people at the store to pay attention. You really should have, lol. They would have fixed the problem right away. I've had a few. I got my own cell line once I hit 18, pretty much, and the number one got used to belong to a woman named Sandra. I know she was pregnant as I had gotten calls from strangers congratulating me on it, and after realizing I had no idea what they were on about, would ask if I had her new number. Dumb request, in my opinion, but I mostly ignored it. I also got voicemail a few times from her place of work, and one sounded very serious. From what I could gather, she was a nurse, or at least worked at a hospital, and they were trying to get her to cover a shift. I called back trying to be helpful, but the person who answered was mostly annoyed. I got a call within the last year asking to speak about my son and how he's in trouble. I'm assuming the same kid from almost a decade ago is getting into trouble at school. Why they listed such an old number, I don't know. Lastly, I still get calls for her and her husband's prescriptions. No idea how many times I called to correct them, but Franz and Sandra had some set up for auto refill. I haven't gotten a reminder in a few weeks, so maybe a pharmacist spoke to them finally. Did you get the pills? You need those blood pressure meds. After all those calls I do sometimes feel like I need them. I woke up to a massive string of texts accusing me of being the man that was cheating with someone's girlfriend or wife. I'm a woman, I didn't work at the place mentioned. They were super apologetic when I text them back in the morning on the plus side. This exact thing happened to me, except they thought I was the third party of a seemingly complicated love triangle. This happened to me, but the person refused to believe that I was not the person she was looking for. She kept calling and texting in the middle of the night, and I had a 7 AM shift the next day. After a while I just turned the phone off, so I could sleep. There were so many missed calls and texts the next day. Someone phoned my parents' landline, in tears, saying that they had proof that my husband was having an affair with his girlfriend. I explained that I was 14 and my parents were in their 40s. He apologized for having the wrong number and hung up. This was around 17 years ago. This happened on Thanksgiving to my grandparents. The phone rang, and my grandmother thought it was one of her relatives calling to say happy holidays or something. Instead it was this tearful woman demanding to know if her husband was there with the whore on the phone instead of being at home with her and his children, like he should be. My grandmother couldn't convince this woman she didn't know what she was talking about until she said, "Let me get my husband," and put my grandfather on the phone. After talking with my grandfather, the woman realized she'd messed up dialing the number of her husband's mistress. She asked to get put back on the phone and apologize with my grandmother. My grandmother then told her it was okay and that she hoped the woman got everything in her impending divorce. Later, when everyone went around the table to say what they were thankful for, Grandpa said, "I'm thankful I'm not that woman's husband." Someone kept messaging me looking for a Sarah. To the point where it was ducking annoying. Took a picture of me shirtless, fat and build like a gorilla. Lots and lots of body hair. Holding a beer. The next text I got searching for Sarah, I sent it to them. They never messaged back. I got a text on my new phone that said, "What are you doing, BB girl?" I replied, "I'm pregnant." Phone rang in like 2 seconds. He was pissed when a guy answered the phone and told me I was an asshole for making him panic. One time when I was about 11 years old, my mom wanted me to call my grandma and read off a recipe for pound cake because my grandma wanted to make one. I dialed the number, someone answered, then I promptly started reciting the recipe my mom gave me. When I got to the end, the person snorted and said, "Oh, I think you have the wrong number." I said I was sorry and hung up, lol. I was working retail at a pet store and got a phone call from an old lady asking to pay her phone bill. She said she had been transferred twice now, and, yes, this had happened before. I told her I was working on a pet store in Alaska, as to which she was very angry. "How dare you lie to me? I have been talking to phone company in Florida, and now you want me to believe I'm talking to a pet store in Alaska." I told her, "Yep. I have no clue how you got transferred to me. But what is your name and number? And what service are you trying to get done?" She gave me her name and phone number and told me that she was just trying to pay an overdue bill on a different phone so she could use her phone again. I checked with her to make sure what company she was calling. I told her I need to check something and I'd be right back. I looked up the company on my computer at work and called. They asked what I wanted, and I asked if I could just be transferred to a manager as it would be easier to explain. I explained that I had a customer who had been trying to call and was transferred. The manager knew the account and the lady, and I asked if he could give the gal a call on her landline, which I had gotten, and they agreed they would within a few minutes. I hung up, took the lady off of hold, and told her something akin to, "Hey, so I got the phone company to agree to call your landline and you should be able to pay that way. If they don't follow through, here's my personal cell line, and let me know." She said thanks and hung up. About a half hour later I get a text from a number in Florida that says, "Hey, my phone works again. Thank you." And I send a picture back of me standing in front of the pet store with snow and mountains in the background, saying, "Glad we here in Alaska could help." The Wholesome Alaskan Pet Store sounds like a good title for something. When I first got my current phone number, it took about 6 months before all of the previous owner's contacts had called me once and realized he changed numbers. I'm 99% sure he sold pot, but he wasn't anyone's go-to dealer. He was the emergency "my usual guy's out, are you holding?" weed guy. They always had some weird code word for what they wanted in the time it took me to explain this was my number now. I'll never forget the guy who called up and said, "Yeah, my usual guy's out, man. I'm looking for turtle food." I like to think this guy was an exclusive turtle food dealer. He's got all the right shit. Fruits that only grow in the Amazon and worms from prehistoric times, because they taste the best to turtles. And some poor bunch of turtles are just eating regular food. It was actually a voicemail left on my work phone. It was a woman going on and on about how the intended recipient was a very naughty boy and he deserved a spanking. I was mortified and deleted it after a few minutes, but I should have kept it. In hindsight, it was hilarious. You were very naughty for deleting it. Had a whole party call my number and sing me happy birthday over the phone. I didn't have the heart to stop them midway, so I stayed quiet until the end. Sorry guys, but my birthday is in December, not June. We had a good laugh about it, and that was that. I had this man text me asking me out to my work number. I explained that he had the wrong number and that I'm just some guy who sells software. He was all, "Don't play me like that, girl," so I sent back a pic of me, all male with my beard etc. He insists that I just googled that image and texts me for 6 months, trying to convince me to go out with him. To be honest, I kinda looked forward to the texts cause it was so funny. You should taken him up on the offer. Maybe you could have gotten a free drink at least. Literally today I called the wrong number trying to set up a dental appointment. Old lady on the other line, "Well, I guess I could get my husband to work on your teeth if you want. He's not a dentist or anything though." I got a call in college, back when we had landlines, from some guy asking for Amanda. I'm not Amanda. He got kind of sad and explained that some girl named Amanda gave him a fake number, and I sat and talked to him for a few minutes where he sobbed about how lonely he was and how he really felt like he connected with this girl Amanda, but she didn't feel the same way obviously. I talked to him for about 15 minutes then had to leave for work. Felt really bad for the guy. Fast forward a year. At that point I had a new number, again a landline. Guy calls and asks for Tammy. I'm not Tammy. Then he launches into this story about how he really felt like he connected with Tammy and she must have given him a wrong number. Apparently Guy was just going through the phone book looking for women to feed this sob story to, so he talked to him for a few minutes